Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Who Are They? Real Talk. Once again, I am Matt, and joining me as always is the one and only Nick Molbach.
How's it going, everybody? Happy quarantine.
Happy quarantine. What are we on week 7? It feels like.
I mean, it just depends on how many episodes we've done of this. I mean, that's actually a pretty good number to go off of, and I think it's been like 5, maybe. Ron?
Yeah, 4 or 5. And of course, joining us is the amazing Taylor Cleek. Taylor, how you doing, bud?
Amazing.
That's good, guys. Happy Alien Day.
Happy Alien Day. Yes, it is Alien Day. Ridley Scott's classic.
Happy to join you.
But today we do have a special guest, and that is none other than Nick's boss and Cleveland's own well-known independent filmmaker, Mr. Johnny Wu. Johnny, how are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good. Thanks for the invite, Matt and Nick and Tyler.
No problem. Anytime. I know Nick and I, when we first started this, had talked about wanting to get you on eventually. So this is something that's been a long time coming.
Absolutely. And it's probably the best way to do it, I guess.
Yes.
Because you're doing the YouTube series as well. And Lou and I were able to be on that, kind of filmed similarly to this. I guess starting out, if you want to tell us a little bit about how that series has been going and what you've been doing with that. And a little bit about yourself, I guess. Your YouTube series that you've been doing.
Well, I was bored to my mind, so I had to do something about it. So I decided to do something related to filmmaking and talk about filmmaking and have people ask questions about it. So Lou, you and Lou were the first people that I actually do interviews with, because I ran out of things to talk about, and that came out really good. So people actually enjoyed it, and I think we have probably about 77 views each time. So it's not that much and not that little. So it's actually enough that people can be enjoyed it. This coming Monday, which is tomorrow, I'm interviewing Scott Brocious. So I'm gonna make that live to YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Figure out how to do that eventually. So that's kind of exciting.
So you can see that at MDI Film on YouTube. By the way, make sure we plug that.
Yeah, thank you.
But no, absolutely. But no, I mean, you've been involved with so much just around Cleveland in general. For those of you who are watching, who probably know Johnny already, but if you want to tell a little bit about yourself to the viewers that might not know who you are.
Sure. I'm a filmmaker. My name is Johnny Wu. I've been making movies since 1998. I've been very fortunate enough to have a lot of my films distributed, short film, feature film wise. And being also administrators of the Cleveland Indie Club groups, which is a monthly get-together meetings for filmmakers in Cleveland, Ohio. We've been doing that since 2003, so that's one of the oldest group in the country. Because Indie Club, there's a bunch of different groups all over the cities, and I was probably the only one left standing. So, which is kind of cool. Besides that, I also produce events. Been doing the Cleveland Asian Festival events for the past 10 years. Unfortunately, this year we canceled the event, so we don't have this year event, but hopefully come back again next year. The other one is the Cleveland Cultural Gardens One Word Day event. This is my 6th year doing it. So far right now, that is still going on, but you never know. Depending on the pandemic, we may not going to have the event. Who knows? So that's basically what I do. I do also do a lot of testing product for companies. Company from China send me products. I test them out, break them with Nick once in a while. He actually broke one of my toys before, so hey.
I was gonna bring that up. Hey, I mean, we brought it up last week. So,
that's good, because the more you can break it, the more you can know what's wrong with it, and they will fix it out and give you a new one. So that's being fortunate to be doing that. So that's about it in a nutshell.
So Johnny, I've always been curious, what got you into filmmaking?
That's a very good question. I'm actually, when I was a kid, I liked to produce events, and back when I was living in Panama in Central America, I'm a diplomat. I was a son of a diplomat, so we travel a lot of different countries, and so doing there, I was 12 years old and organized a whole bunch of high school events, like mocking the teachers, do shows like that, and I always put it together. There's one time I put together a choir groups for the diplomat's wife. They can go to different diplomatic events and they sing. I was not invited because I was under 18, so they can go. I can go anywhere. kind of sucks. So I came back to Cleveland and started doing lots of different activities for promoting events. Did a martial art tournaments for 3 years. Did really big and did well done. And then I did a bunch of different smaller events, martial demonstrations, so on. Until '98, I met a friend of mine, a filmmaker, photographer from the Cleveland Museum of Art, natural history of Cleveland Museum of Art, and we teamed up together and started MDI. So he and I, we worked together and did our first feature film called Twisted. Never got released because one of the main actors, Sean Ferris, got really big in Hollywood, so he asked us to not to release it, and we agreed not to do that. He doesn't talk to me anymore, which is kind of sad. But I just found a bunch of pictures of him too, so it's kind of unfortunate. But from through that, I've been doing lots of work. Traveled back and forth in LA back in 2002. I'm sorry, 2001, back and forth for a year and a half. Every other week living in LA and then here, and then trying to make a living, and did well. Get to know Hollywood, get to know how people work, and so just continue my filmmaking. Since then, and got fortunate enough that everything that's just been doing well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes.
No, if you want to talk about a few of your projects that you've been working on, I mean, I know a lot of the people who watch this series have been in them because, I mean, they are so inviting, whether it be Inner Self with its flash mob scene and such. But if you want to talk about some of your projects that you've been involved with.
So one of my first projects, a fan film called A Joker's Card back in 2004, that did really well. So I decided to do a little bit more fan films and did a Superman fan film. And then after that got so well received, and everybody said you should do a feature film. So I did The Rapture. You can watch it for free now. The movie's horrible, but you can go and watch it and enjoy it. That's you probably can learn something there. I don't know. We were the first people in Cleveland doing wire work in independent filmmaking base, and we just continue with that. So in 2018, I released a martial comedy musical, and that did okay because it's a very weird genre to sell. So it's still being tried to be sold to different countries, but it's still, because of the pandemic, now we're just waiting for country to pick it up.
Right.
And then I also helped executive produce 2 films, feature film, one for Jason and the other one for Keith. Then another fan film called Parker. Nick did all the editing and special effects for that. That actually did really well. We also did a Doctor Who fan film that surprisingly did well. Every time I go to different Comic-Con, people say, I know you. You're the guy who did the Doctor Who fan film. It's really great. It's kind of cool to be heard of that. So that's kind of interesting. My latest project is from last year, Wuxia 2, The Code. That is going to be hopefully coming out by the end of this month, end of May, right after Maximilian. So we'll see hopefully that comes out, and hopefully see how far that goes. Currently trying to work. We were working on a project for spring, but never going to happen now because of the pandemic. I'm an executive producer and co-directed that drama feature film with Jeremy Campbell. He wrote the script. It's actually very interesting story. So we may be trying to think of it September, if not maybe next year. So we're still waiting for the time when it's good. And I'm working on a project right now for this winter, another feature film, sci-fi martial art type. So kind of like Wuxia 2, but had nothing to do with it, but just a little more what do you call, thriller, horror, sci-fi-ish type.
The ability to do wire work, I feel, is like not something you encounter too often on the independent film realm. How did you come to that?
Well, I just always like to fly, so that's the best way to put it. When I do wire work, because I grew up a very Chinese culture background, and wire work is part of the martial art training. Well, not the martial art folklore. So you get to hear lots of things about in the Chinese novels how people can fly from one feet to the other feet and so on and so on. My dad understands how to train that, but they don't call them flying; they call them jumping. So based on the training you do, you can actually jump about 6 feet tall or 7 feet tall, and that's through training. And back in China, the walls are shorter, so the walls in different houses are like 6 to 7 feet tall. So a person can jump over the house, which is normal because the house is short, it's small. So that's basically the in novels, why people write novels, they write about people can fly over the houses and this and that. So that became wire work. So I always want to incorporate wire work in my movie because I think it's kind of interesting and different. So we did a little short test for 3 minutes long back in 2002. The chase, it actually did well. It's a one fight sequence in a freight elevator, and then people flying around it with flying up and down only. So it did well. So we did that, and then we did a couple of more stuff. The Rapture have a lot of wire work in it. We have people flying backwards, people flying up and down. I'm doing one of the trailer shoot that we did for the trailer. We actually have a guy fell backwards and didn't land to the pads and actually broke a few of his ribs.
Oh.
So that was an unfortunate incident, but that was actually the biggest and the only major incident we had during the whole shoot. But other than that, everything came out really well. The wire was always fun to do. People enjoyed being on. George Tootie was on wire. E. Ray Goodwin was on wire. Brandy Seymour was on wire. Kyle Zamanek was on wire. Then we had Ben Soraki, a couple other people. So it was always fun thing to do wire work. A little bit different.
Well, definitely. I know with Parker, that had a ton of wire work in it, and I actually rewatched that today in preparation for this. You've always been the guy who, no matter what, you're like Kevin Smith, where you like to make the kind of movies you want to see. Would you just agree with that sentiment?
Yeah. I also like to make movies to challenge myself. Every time I do a movie, it had to be more complicated than the one before. So that's always true. Like the next feature film in winter I'm doing, we're gonna do wire work outdoor, so in a very controlled environment. So that's gonna be a little bit different, and let's see how far I can go with that.
How I guess. A lot of projects, you do a lot of shorts as well as features, obviously. Mm-hmm. The Prize was one that just came out recently that's on YouTube, where you can see me drop a battery at the end. But Wuja was a short that turned into a feature film. So how important would you say for all the younger filmmakers and people who are really starting, how important would you say making short films are to get to the point that you want to be at?
It's actually very important. If you want to go out and do your first feature film and you never have any filmmaking experience, you're going to encounter a lot of obstacles. And that could be something that you have to think about a little bit harder and how to organize a little bit more. But by making a lot of short films, you learn the process of doing it, and you hone your skill to make a better feature film. Especially when you are participating in all those film competition, like the 48-hour film competition. Some of them have the 24 hours. There's a 72 hours film competition. You participate in those kind of environment and force you to have more control, understanding how to control your time, and do not go over the time that you need to do to make your movie. And it's very important because that kind of experience carries on to your feature film and make it easier for you to understand how to make a feature film better. And like Nick, you had a very good example. I mean, you did lots of short films, and then you just finished up a recent feature film, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's just something that I like to preach to other filmmakers. It's just advice that I have, because I have a lot of people who go up to me and they're like, hey, I wrote this feature-length script. Would you help me make it? Then I'm like, well, how many shorts have you done before? And what experiences do you have when it comes to your filmmaking and such like that? And a lot of them don't end up having that experience, where I see you as a perfect example of that, where especially with Wuja, you took a concept and you turned it into something bigger. So I just applaud you for that, and definitely agree that it is a very good way to go about it when it comes to filmmaking.
Thank you. Well, the first one we shot at basically just showcasing people fighting. And then the second one, you had to add in writings and stories, so that went a little bit more crazier. But we pulled it off, and then we have a very talented cast and crew that are working together. We shot two. We have over 100 cast and then maybe about 30 different crews and all working hard. Working on the weekends. Nobody get paid. Sometimes they had to travel about an hour and a half, and outside the cold weather, which usually I like to film my stuff on because cold is such a beautiful. So that's how I.
It does look really nice, people.
Yeah,
it looks brilliant. But I was there that day, and it was definitely very cold. But when you see like what the final product is, I mean, the same thing goes for any special effects that I've experienced and stuff like that, where it takes time. And for that example, it would take time out in the cold. But I mean, it looks really nice in the end.
Yeah,
so.
I hope so. And we'll see how far it goes with the distribution.
Real quick, anybody who's watching, if you have any questions for Johnny, drop them in and we will post them up so he can see them and possibly answer them. I actually watched Wuxia. Nick can attest to this. I'm the type of guy who, when I know we're doing an interview with someone, I try to go back and watch as much of their stuff as possible and just get a better idea of their style and everything. And Wuxia, like you just said, it was a way to showcase the some martial artist fighters. But I watched that, and just some of how it was shot. You mentioned cold weather. How it was shot was really interesting, and there were some really crisp, clean shots that I just loved seeing on the screen.
Yeah, that's because we have Jason as one of the main DP, and we wanted to make like the 28 days later type of style, where you see ghostly motion when you fight against each other or running. So we apply that one to the camera. So every time we switch camera angles, there you see a very, very ghostly looking shot of speed throughout the whole thing. It looks like more impactful fight sequences. I wanted to do the same thing with Wuxia 2, but we didn't. We're out of time because no matter how much time we spend on scheduling and planning, there's always a problem when it happens with the weather, since everything was shot outdoor. Like the one day we shot a boat scene, we didn't expect to be having a storm coming in. That we had to quickly get everything wrapped up so we can get out of the place. And fortunately now we got everything done, but we didn't have the drone shot I wanted to do. We didn't have time to do all the fight sequence that we wanted to plan for, but we make it work as much as we can.
I do hear there's a lot of fan films in your body of work, and I did watch Parker because of Nick's involvement. I did enjoy that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, what brought you to fan films? What's the appeal on that idea for you?
The first one, because we were drunk one day. And a bunch of people, my friends, Kyle Zaminak, Dave and David, a couple of them, Dan, Dana, David, Levy. We were sitting there drinking, and I was like, Kyle, you look like Joker's son. So why don't I just write a story about all the Osprey and make it a parody type and have your guys' personality in it? And so everybody agreed and just quickly put the story together and then went out there. And we had wire work in there just to make it a little bit interesting and more fancier. That short film was well received. That because of that film, I met my current sales agent for Inner Self. He saw the movie online and he loves it so much that he said that he wanted to represent me for the future. So I have been with him since The Rapture. And got fortunate that he's one of the smaller version of sales agent that make you money back. So every time he sell to a territory, you see money back right away in your pocket. So I've been with him since then till Inner Self. Wuxia 2, I went with somebody else because I want to see how the different market works, just to expand my knowledge about distribution. Yeah, that's all I did. Yes, Matt.
I know Wuxia 2 is kind of been making its way through like the festival circuit for martial arts movies. As I know with COVID, were there a couple festivals that it was supposed to be in that COVID kind of canceled, or?
No, actually not yet, because all the one I submitted to is such a later in summertime, and so I did get an email just now about the action on film in Las Vegas. Agreed to show it, and we have a few emails that I cannot sell yet that confirmed that we got showing screening in September this year, but I cannot make that announcement because they haven't publicized it.
Right.
There's a few festivals turned it down. one turned it down. Kind of funny because every time they turn me down a movie of screening, I will write them an email asking, say, hey, I'd like to know why you turned it down so I can learn better to become a better filmmaker next time. So the email reply was, you submitted in November. We already have our selection picked in November. And we only have 6 slots available for all the 200 films submitted. So it wasn't because they didn't like it. It's just because I submitted very late.
Right.
Something last year I submitted to Urban Film Festival in over in New York City. Right after I found out about the deadline, and I sent it in. And unfortunately, again, I sent it a little bit too late, so they couldn't screen it. So the organizer told me to resubmit again this year, just because he likes the movie so much, but unfortunately, the slot already be full. So that could happen. So one thing I learned about film festival submission is you don't submit late. You always submit on time, because sometimes all the films are being judged or watched by the jury, and they already picked the top numbers and starting planning for scheduling. So if you submit it in during the late time of the submission, you most likely will not get it in because already have your slots full.
I was gonna say, do you have any more advice when it comes to the festival scene? Because I know that it's such a particular scene that you're looking for. So I know that like submitting to these bigger festivals might not be as necessary for a film like Wuxia, where you would want to obviously target more towards people who are interested in martial arts films and stuff like that. But
for Wuxia too, my goal is not for film festival route. It is more about distribution route. So if I don't get to any film festival, it really doesn't matter because I already got picked up for distribution. So that's my goal. But if you submit to a festival, you want to submit to the festival to cater to your genre. It might sci-fi action film, so you had to go to that kind of festivals. And for anybody who submitted to a film festival, the shorter your film is, the quicker to get in there because of the time slot. So let's say, for example, you have a 2-minute film or 5-minute film or 10-minute film, you can get in there quicker because a time slot or they festival schedule every 2 hours for a time slot. So a feature film can last only hour and a half. They can push in there another 2-minute short film to be opening or ending part of it. So that's easy to get in there. Feature film wise, you always have to submit way ahead of everybody else as soon as possible, because when they start watching them, you get judged, and if people like it, then you get in, go to second judging, third judging, and then you finally get shown. So the earlier you get in, the better chance that you have to get in there. And remember, feature film wise has to be good. Unfortunately, I have to think about is the festival. If the festival is more about the people who watch a movie festival is more like a dramatic type of movies or documentary style of movies, submitting those kind of festivals not going to get you anything, because the people who watch your film at home that are judging your films, they don't know anything about action film. They know more about drama or documentary. So they cannot connect the kind of storyline you will tell them, and they'll find every kind of excuse to tell you the movie sucks, and so they don't get in there. And that happens a lot. So you always have to submit your film to the right genre type of festival you want. Then the chance of getting there quicker.
So do these festivals always give you notes for when you're submitting and say like you get turned down?
Technically speaking, it's supposed to, but most of the time will ignore you. I've been fortunate enough that all the feature films I submitted to, they'll give me the comment back. Intercell, for example, I submitted to the Austin Asian American Film Festival, and the comments were so vague that doesn't make sense. One guy said about story too short. I didn't develop the characters. The second guy said story too long. The characters are developed too much. And obviously because Austin Asian American Film Festival is more a prestige festival. If you don't have a good story or you don't have a celebrity involved in a movie project, chances are you're not going to get it, because they're going to use those slots for films that have a celebrity in it already. So you gotta have to understand that, and don't say about because your movie is not good. If your movie every movie has its own audiences. It only depending whether or not you tap to the right audience or not.
All right. Well, joining us now, and I'm pretty sure he probably has a few questions because I think he did his homework on you. We have our buddy Chris. Chris, how you doing, man?
Yes, sir. What's going on, guys?
Howdy.
Mr. Wu, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me here.
No doubt. So I was really intrigued by just the range of the genres that you blend into certain projects. Like you definitely tackle drastically different genres into one. And I don't know if you guys have already asked this question, but what makes you want to direct certain projects like musicals or comedies or blending kung fu into them? Like what's the driving force behind that?
The driving force is first the story, second the person who I'm working with. For example, if Nick comes to me to tell me right now that he's doing a horror film and he wanted my help for 100%, I had to say yes to him, right? Even though the story sucks, I had to say yes to him, right?
I'm not pitching a horror film today.
Yeah,
hey,
so,
we have one in the can for him. Don't worry. Save it.
So that's one thing. Story is very important for me, and also because I actually experienced a lot of different genres. I work horror films, slasher films, comedy. The martial art comedy musical I did, Inner Cell, was a challenge because my sales agent was bitching about how much he didn't get anything from me, and he wanted me to give him a challenging film. So I said to him, why don't I do a martial art comedy musical? So after 5 seconds of silence, he said, sure, no problem. And of course, it's very challenging because you have a hard time selling it. We sold it to China, Thailand, and South Korea. So Taiwan, sorry, and South Korea. So 3 countries so far. But for him, it's such hard to sell because now in the slowdown session, most of the buyers do not buy film at this point because they want to know what's going on. They want to save their money. Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh no, that's exactly like I was just super curious because that's like it could be really ambitious to not only to sell certain people on it, but I bet it was such a challenge to make it as well.
It's always challenging. The whole process is challenging, from writing the script or reading the script to scheduling to production to post-production. The more you do it, the more you realize the first copy of the version of the movie storyline that you have change to become a second one when you go to productions, and then become a third one when you post-production. Maybe when you release it, it's the 4 versions. So it's always a challenging. The part that I hate the most is scheduling. I hate scheduling. If I had somebody else that can do it for me, by all means, I let them do it. And most people don't want to do that because feature film scheduling is a pain in the butt, especially for independent filmmakers.
Yeah.
So.
Now I know with I remember Misha joking with you. I can't remember if it was at an indie club or just on Facebook, where he was one of the stars of Inner Self, and he started Lola as the band, and he's like, yeah, Johnny, a year ago I didn't sing for anything. Now I was in Inner Self, and now I'm a musician because.
Yep. That's what I like to do. I mean, I've been fortunate enough that many people who work in my past project have become somebody else in somewhere else and become popular. For example, Misha, a very good example. He doesn't know how to sing, but we make it sound so good, so great in Inner Self that he became rapping. It's actually something that he really like to do. We have Sean Ferris. We did the first movie with him, and he loved become an actor. He was a model, photographer. Not acting model, much more a model for photographs from Ohio. So he after the Rapture, he moved to LA and stayed there, lived in a car for a bunch of many years, and become successful. Did Never Back Down, Free Runners, a couple of them feature films, and now he's married to an Asian girl and doing well. But he doesn't talk to me anymore. I have a lot of like the other guys. Sean Grandila, I'm not sure you know him. He's always in TV shows a lot. Lots of TV acting, a lot of act shows in movies and TV shows. And we did a music video with him here in Cleveland, Ohio, and then he loved it, and then he pursued his acting career, and now moved to New York City and doing really well. And, I mean, you can see every TV shows. Most of the time he's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm curious to know, what is your creative process like? Because when I hear something like a martial art musical, that's a pretty distinct and original idea. So I'm wondering, like, where do you pull influence or inspiration from when you get a new idea like that?
That one was originally came out on my dream as just a comical storyline, and then I was like, I always want to do a musical, and so why not just try something different? And when my sales agent push and bitches about me being not doing anything for him, I was like, why? Well, you know what? Let's try to do a martial art comedy musical, and so that came about. I watch lots of movies. I used to collect over 10,000 movies. My dad did. He had over 5,000 VHS tapes and then 5,000 beta tapes machines. I have over thousands of movies digitally in Blu-ray and VHS tape. So I watch a lot of those movies, and when I watch them, I don't watch for the story. I watch for how they make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Very good example. Check out in Netflix. There's a Taiwanese or Chinese series called Handsome Siblings. Every episode, they got people flying on the rooftop of the houses or flying between trees. And I was like, how much budget do they have to get to that? That's the always thing that come out of my mind. And I was like, you know what? I want to get a crane like them they do have, so I can have people flying around outdoors. Because it's ridiculous. Yeah, so it's ridiculous how they can pull it off. And that's something that's my inspiration. I watch those movies. I studied and say how they make it happen, and figure out how I can do it in a cheap way, and then pull it off and say, hey, we did it.
Well,
to the point that if he had me up in a crane, he'd leave me there. So
yeah, no, that's the beauty of it.
Okay.
People had left me on the crane on a harness and then walk away from me. They want better pay of nothing.
Well, I know everyone in the Cleveland independent film scene speaks so highly of you, and everyone. And I mean,
it's all lies.
It's lies. So
yeah.
So me, Tosh.
I have enemies.
so Misha, Sean, Laura, Ron, all them are lying.
They're lying. Laura lies the most. No, I know she's dead right now, so I had to make fun of her. Yeah, they're lying. They don't know me in person. They just know me from movie scenes.
Hey, I know. I work with you.
You lie.
I am not
you
lying.
bring my stuff, so that doesn't count.
Oh, okay. All right.
But no, what do you think it is about you and your sets that helps people gravitate towards wanting to work with you?
I'm always very honest about my projects. I don't tell them that if I cannot pay them, I tell them upfront I'm not going to be able to pay you. If I can pay you, I will quietly talk to each one of them and say, hey, you know what? Why don't I give you $100 here and there for your gas money? That's all I can afford, but this is how you can get. And if you're honest with me too, then we go a long way. But if you're going to come to my set and say to me, Johnny, when are we going to wrap tonight? That's going to be a big, big flag for me to say I'm not going to work with you anymore. Don't do that to any director because we have so many planned out, and the day of the shooting, it's always difficult for us to have to think about how soon we need to shoot your scene because you want to go out by 5 o'clock. No, that's a number one no, and that's my pet peeves. So if somebody coming like that, I never work with that person anymore. That's for a fact. But yeah, I'm being always honest. I always treat them well. I promise them I will deliver, and I try my best to deliver the projects. And we have good food. I mean, our catering always is fantastic. Nick, you can vouch for that.
Very good.
You got real good food. I don't feed you pizza only by pizza or sandwiches. I feed you everything. You want pizza? I'll give you pizza, garlic bread, all the soda you want to drink, and fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, that one day I was there on Parker. That was some good food.
Yeah,
I mean, to that point, though, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, I can attest to having to go to the trope of pizza every once in a while. But, I mean, like, if you have somebody who can provide excellent food, it really does help wanting to come back. I mean, it honestly does.
Yeah, Ron just said it. Yeah, he just typed. He said it's amazing food. Yeah, we do. And I'm fortunate enough that the key about filmmaking, successful filmmaking, is not only you need to treat your cast and crew with respect, you also have to treat everybody you know with respect. Because, for example, if you're making a movie, Inner's a very good example. We shot in a Metro Park Zoo. and we got it for very, very low cost, just because I happen to know the owners very well, and we're friends. Same thing. You're friend with everybody in your network, and suddenly you need catering for 12 days. I got 5 different Chinese, no, 4 different Chinese restaurants and 1 American food place that I can actually reach out to every time I need to, and ask for them to provide me catering for free. It was just that simple. All I did just ask. The reason why they like to do that for me, because I patronize their businesses. I would go to this restaurant, I eat them almost every day, or enjoy the food. For example, Scoop, Trimwood Scoop, my favorite restaurant, ice cream place. This is my cat, John, by the way.
He misses me. That's what it is.
He drives me crazy. He's very spoiled. So I go there every time we have finished a 48-hour project. We would go and have everybody, all the cast and crew, have free ice cream there, and they love me so much they will let me use this place anytime I want to.
We were trying that one day.
Yeah, we actually tried one day to shoot there, and unfortunately we couldn't. Our gear broke, so we couldn't shoot anything. But they let us do it. This is called relation building. You build with a friendship with everybody, and in return, you treat them with respect, you treat them with honesty, and in return, they would give you the same thing back.
Well, I was gonna say I could attest to that definitely. Just coming from where I met Johnny, he came in and spoke to one of my classes. Now I was friends with Johnny on Facebook because a trope of the Cleveland film scene is that everybody eventually becomes friends with each other, and that's kind of a big networking thing. But he came to speak to one of my classes. I'm like, oh, a Spider-Man fan film. I'm going to audition for that. And then, went to the studio where we used to work and just kind of, got to know him, got to know the location. And I did something that I never do. And that's just straight up be like, you have any internship opportunities? And that's where my relationship with Johnny started, because he's extremely inviting, and I thank you every single day, obviously, for the amount of work that I've been able to do and stuff.
You did a great job, so I keep you around. That's why.
I appreciate that, but I mean, it to anybody who wants to work on films and stuff like that, it's just a great place to learn the insides and outsides of film. I mean, we worked on Parker. And I auditioned for the movie, and it was an opportunity where I was able to be lucky enough to skyrocket to an assistant director position very early on, and learn so much from Johnny when it came to scheduling, which is obviously, I share that sentiment with you about how scheduling is the worst thing in the world. But it's working with Johnny, you learn so much. I remember at our one of our gatherings, I said I went to film school. Everything that I learned was from Johnny, because we are able. There's so much experience. You learn so much from experience. I think that's kind of just what I'm trying to get at.
I guess you want to raise person, right?
Yeah, I mean, it helps. But no, it's just it's the opportunity that you provide. At least me, you provided me with so much opportunity and abilities to work on different things that you learn so much from those experiences and can bring them into. Hi, John. John, I miss you too. You can bring them into your own sets and stuff like that. So
yeah. Thank you.
Well, I know that Nick and I have always felt so highly of your opinions on matters, and I know I've occasionally asked you an idea, run an idea I have by you, or Nick runs one of my ideas by you. But part of this week's episode, because we love your opinion so much, is each of us put together our own little film pitch, and we're going to have you be the judge and decide what film you would want to back if it were to happen.
Sure.
So, and in this case, let's pretend you're this multi-million-dollar exec. So,
I thought he was.
Yeah, wait, he's not?
Well, I have my money, but it's not for you guys.
Well, no.
Since it's be funny because we had this conversation. He's like, "We're not making the films, right?" I'm like, "No."
You signed the contract.
What contract? I say nothing.
But we are going to have Nick, because of your relationship with Johnny. Nick, you're going to start us off. So let me drop myself, Taylor, and Chris out real quick, and you can have your moment to sign.
Wait, how long do we got? I mean, obviously we don't.
You got 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes to make your pitch.
Oh, I could keep mine pretty short. Mine's pretty simple. So
all right. Well, let me drop the three of us out and you two talk it out.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
So no, my pitch is something that I've been kind of sitting on, and I think that this is a nice thing about this is just getting an opinion of a project that I have been sitting on for a little while, that I actually outlined out, and even today I was kind of changing some things up with it. But mine isn't going to cost a lot of money, I will say, and it has one small celebrity appearance in it, and I only know that because they said that they'd act in my movie. I don't know if I can ever hold them to that, but so my idea is it's a coming of age drama, and a lot of those are really in right now when it comes to Netflix and such. So it's the idea of a young man who makes videos for just for himself. He shares them with his friends. He uploads them to YouTube, but unlisted because he'd rather stay invisible. His life at school isn't particularly all that great, and he decides to kind of shelter himself from bullies and stuff like that by keeping to himself when it comes to his own projects and stuff like that he works on. Except one day he gets paired up with what you would consider the popular girl at school for a project, for a science class. And when he goes to send his new video out to the group of friends that he has, he accidentally sends it to her. So, and she enjoys it, but it's all about him trying to keep his personal life out, but also kind of expand and realize that, there are good people out there in the world who can enjoy different projects and stuff like that. And she kind of helps him filter that out. And my idea was to have the teacher that he always goes to, played by Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, because even outside of Power Rangers now, he's kind of just this inspirational man who, loves helping people. The big climax is that one of the jocks who wants to date the girl that he likes finds the video on her phone and releases it out to the entire school. Whether or not he's doing something silly in it or not is beyond him, but he's always picked on either way. And it ends with, him just kind of accepting who he is and sharing his content with the world. So
I actually heard similar storyline on Disney Channel.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, I've been sitting on this for a while. It was actually an idea that I had come up with after I saw the movies 8th Grade and Love, Simon. That's kind of where I combined the ideas the most, whereas the whole idea of Love, Simon is that he's trying to figure out who this girl is, or guy is, that he has been chatting with the entire time. Mm-hmm. The difference is obviously that we know who the girl is the whole time. And a relationship obviously starts to brew through that. So eventually it's definitely a way to accept yourself. And
I definitely have seen some a movie like this before. Very similar storyline. Using the internet and stuff, and they get bullied and stuff. So your story is very similar to what I've seen on Disney Channel. So if you want to double check and check out Disney Channel, you will probably find a movie. It's a movie done by Disney.
Gotcha. Well, that's my pitch, boys. So
okay, thank you.
Chris is up next.
Yeah. Real quick, Taylor, Chris, what did you think of his pitch?
I'm a sucker for coming of age stuff, and you'll see why in a second when I get to mine. But it's I mean, I'd watch it. Those two movies you said, I love them. So.
Yeah, I love Simon. I own that. I'm not even on front. That's one of my favorite coming of age movies.
I took notes.
Simon's great. Simon's great. No, I love a coming age of film too. I enjoy a good high school movie once in a while. There's definitely a lot of them. you know, and they do have similarities, but you can always find an angle or an execution that separates, you know, like Love, Simon, you know, I'd say that's quality wise leaps and bounds ahead of, you know, like a Disney Channel movie. So
yeah.
So Johnny, and I appreciate that. I should have said this before, but you did anyways. You gave Nick notes, so feel free to, with any of us, just give us notes after the fact. So, all right, now, Chris, just let me know ahead of time, because I know Taylor has a visual aid and I do too. So, do you have one?
I have a presentation.
All right. Share your. Is it? Do you have it? Share. Is it on your computer?
Yes, it is.
Share your screen so I can throw this up here.
PowerPoint squad.
They all have visual aid. What happened to you, Nick?
I just made a children's video with my family yesterday, where my mom read a book to a bunch of puppets.
I did my visual aid today, so like
you should have pitched it with the puppets.
Oh, you're right. That's what it was.
All right. All right, you can go. Just hit. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I was just about to say, just go full screen with it.
It's a fan film, isn't it?
I mean, in this example, you're a Hollywood exec, so it might be a fan film, it might not, but let me drop the rest of us down. You know, you can just share the application screen, right, Chris?
Can I?
Yeah, so hit share screen again, or hit stop share. When you hit share screen, it says your entire screen, application window, or Chrome tab, or whatever you're using. So if you're
okay,
application window, and you can just use PowerPoint that way. There we go. All right,
we're learning.
Yeah, so let me drop myself, Taylor, and Nick out, and we have Chris coming with his presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right, Nick. Chris, your turn to showcase. Tell me what you can offer me.
Yes. So, Mr. Wu, can I call you Johnny?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Johnny. My name's Chris Anthony Lopez. I'm just a college student from Indiana, and today I'm here to pitch you Static Shock. I don't know if you are familiar with Static Shock, but if not, yes. And for those who are not, I will go ahead and explain briefly. Static Shock is an inner city kid who essentially becomes not cursed, but he gets superpowers because he necessarily, in a world where he doesn't necessarily want to. He lost his mother when he was really young, and he only lives with his mom and his sister, or his dad and his sister. And he's just a kid. He's not popular. He's not quiet. He's just there, living his daily life. And then when he gets superpowers, his life changes for the better and sometimes for the worst. It may sound familiar to another certain character that Mr. Wu, you are definitely no stranger to, but we'll get to that in a second. So briefly, my quick thing, my little elevator pitch, if I had to call it that, this movie will essentially be a combination of Spider-Man: Homecoming and Boys in the Hood. It will be a nice blend of the two. It's going to essentially take the high school feel of Spider-Man, but also taking the real life situations that we've seen in films like Boys in the Hood. Okay. So to continue with the plot. So the plot is you have to introduce Static Shock as if no one's heard of him before, which to a lot of people, they may not know who this character is. Unless you are a fan of the several animated series he's been a part of, or if you read the Milestone comic books, you don't know who Static Shock is. So we have to treat him as if he is a brand new character that's just been created. And I'll get to that way later. But the plot is relatively simple. Virgil Hawkins is a kid at Dakota City High School, and he's just living his daily life. He's a sophomore, and he always just chums it around with his best friend, Richie. And they have to deal with the typical high school stuff, homework, tests, and bullies. And the main antagonist of the story is a villain that we got to see in the Static Shock animated series from the early 2000s by the name of Francis Stone. Francis Stone's a senior. He just always picks on Virgil and Richie, specifically Virgil. He just has something against Virgil. And later in the first act, we see the inciting event for the rest of the film. It's a little baby chemical explosion that happens in Dakota City that happens to just affect and contact many people in the short area that was at. And in that area was Virgil and Francis Stone, the bully and the protagonist and the hero of our story. And they were both given these superpowers. Virgil is given the power of controlling and just taking in electromagnetism essentially. And Francis Stone, he's a pyromaniac. He can use fire to however he wants. So the rest of the story is kind of simple. It's Virgil primarily learning his powers, learning to adapt them to his life. He doesn't tell his mom, or doesn't tell his dad, doesn't tell his sister, and we see where Virgil's life is, and we are essentially just learning who this character is. We're learning along with him, and the film plays out like it would generally be. I'm not looking for anything new. This isn't going to really break any grounds in regards to storytelling, but it's a third act where both these kids essentially that have new superpowers, they're being pit against each other, and Virgil will ultimately go out on top. But still, we are introduced to this new hero in Dakota City, and Dakota City is introduced to this new hero and villain, which sparks the idea in many people's brains, like, hey, maybe I can use my superpowers for villainy or for good. And in that chemical explosion, Virgil and Francis were not the only ones that were given new superpowers, and we'll be introduced to them later, hopefully, if we get more than one film. But in this one film, it's an origin story. And to fill out my cast, I went ahead and casted this thing. So I have Caleb McLaughlin. He plays Lucas on Stranger Things. He's 19 years old. He can play younger. I'm looking for Virgil to be 16 years old, and Caleb looks like he's 16. He'll look like he can pass for 16. And he's a recognizable face. He's been in Stranger Things for a few years now. People know who. It's one of the most popular shows of the 21st century. You need a name and a face to carry this franchise, and Caleb's the perfect guy to do it, in my opinion. And to fill out the supporting cast for this film, to play Virgil's father is Mahershala Ali. Again, you need a recognizable face. This is the one big star in this film. And his dad is just super paranoid about the world that Virgil's going into, because this film is based in modern day. So not only do we see the tensions racially amongst or towards African Americans, that's what Virgil's dad's all about. And he's worried about his young son going into this world. He does not know about his superpowers, but he soon will. And Mahershala Ali just encapsulates that for me. And we've already seen him in superhero media. He was in the Luke Cage television series Cottonmouth, and he was in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. As his sister, Sharon, I have Alexandra Shipp. Richie Foley is his best friend. I have Jaden Martell. He was in It, and he's right now on Defending Jacob, the Apple TV series. And as the villain, Francis Stone, I have Colin Ford, who was on Supernatural, and he was recently on Daybreak on Netflix. But why Static Shock, and why now? We haven't gotten too many superhero movies with minorities as the protagonists. Like in the Marvel movies, we always see them as the sidekick. And at least in the last few years, we've actually gotten to progress a little bit with Black Panther with a predominantly Black cast, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But before that, all we had was Blade and Spawn. And yeah, Blade was right before the superhero boom, and Spawn was there. Spawn was definitely there. But I put Joker up there because Joker proved to us that we can take a comic book property and make it different, and not necessarily make it the same as how it was before, and tweak it and twist it, and it not necessarily be the same thing that we are normally used to. And Shazam, I like the tone of the film because it's a kid getting superpowers, and so it's the baby steps towards what I want Static Shock to be. And Spider-Man, going back to that for a second, it's no secret that Static Shock is the archetype that Spider-Man set in the 60s. It's the same character, same thing. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Warner Brothers and DC, they need a boost right now in a franchise. With their failing franchises, and with Joker not necessarily being that franchise, maybe being a one-off film, Static Shock and Virgil Hawkins can be what Spider-Man and Peter Parker are to millions of people. And I think Static Shock could be that next franchise to not only catapult DC films back into the limelight, but also just be a good comic book film to introduce a new hero to a new generation of people. or really just to the general public. I know I would have loved this movie as a kid, and even now as a 22-year-old boy, man, however you want to put it, I would love to see a Static Shock film.
Well, don't worry, I would like to see that too.
And that's it.
That's kind of, I always like comic books, so cool. That's actually a pretty good one. I like that.
Thanks.
Good presentation, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody's going to come back and just going to leave us hanging.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on the party to come back. I haven't told anybody. What's going on, guys?
Hold on, we got a message from Nick.
Yeah, Matt actually asked me this morning what my pitch was. He asked for my idea, and I said no. Like, you're gonna see it later. Let's not try to jump the gun.
No, I was just curious.
I did tug at his arm to let me use IPs, to let me use already existing characters. So, and this is why I wanted it, so I can talk about Static for 10 minutes.
I mean, it was a hell of a pitch. I ain't even gonna lie.
Yeah, it was a good pitch.
I watched the Static Shock movie, man. I love that cartoon growing up.
When you said Boys in the Hood meet Spider-Man Homecoming, I was like, well, shit.
Yeah, dude. Like, and that was the last part I added to the presentation. I thought I needed like an elevator pitch. But who's next?
There we go. Nick's back. Here, Nick. What'd you think?
Brilliant. I loved it. I thought that the casting was nailed. The plot is there. I think a Static Shock movie needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, well, Taylor was going to go next, but he's got an original idea. I'm going to follow. I rather follow IP with IP and let Taylor have the last.
Oh, okay. Gonna leave little old me for last.
No, that's a compliment, Taylor.
Maybe follow all you guys. We'll see about that.
Hey, best for last. Best for last.
Well prepared. Go ahead, man. Your turn.
So originally, let me drop them from the screen. So originally, I was the one pushing for all original IP. Now work got in the way this week, so I wasn't able to do that like I wanted to.
Okay.
So instead, I went with something that had been floating around my head for about the past month, which is, and I just got to pull the tab up. My film pitch is actually the sequel to, and what I would consider to be the final film in this series, because I feel like where it ended, it didn't get a complete and full ending like it should have been, and that would be the Kelvin timeline Star Trek films.
Okay.
So I've titled it Star Trek: The New Frontier, and this story, and there's like 4 pages of plot, so give me a break. The film takes place about 6 years after the initial 5-year mission in space. Kirk and the crew have accomplished and lost so much in the years since. Chekhov sacrificed himself for the good of the crew back towards the end of the mission, which, with Anton Yelchin dying in real life, I felt like that was the only way you can respect that character. Mm-hmm. Sulu is now the captain of the Excelsior, which had been hinted at throughout the series, the J.J. Abrams films. Spock is now captain of the Enterprise and preparing for his wedding with Uhura. Scotty has since retired from Starfleet, while Kirk and Bones have settled into positions at Starfleet Command as Admiral and Head Medical Officer, respectively. On the week of Spock and Uhura's wedding, while everyone is reunited and a distress beacon is received from a ship on the edge of Klingon space, the distress beacon appears to be coming from the long-lost USS Kelvin, which in the Kelvin timeline is kind of that starting point. That's why we have this completely different timeline. That's where everything changed. And it's been well known that with the fourth film of this series, they were going with bringing back Chris Hemsworth's Captain George Kirk in some way or form. So Kirk requests permission from command to go evaluate the situation with Captain Spock and the Enterprise due to how close that this whole situation hits to home. When denied permission, Kirk, along with Scotty, Bones, Sulu, sneak aboard the Enterprise in typical Kirk fashion after being discovered by the ship's new Chief Medical Officer, Carol Marcus, an old flame of Kirk, who we saw in Star Trek Into the Beyond, or Into Darkness, excuse me. The crew of stowaways is brought before Captain Spock, who understands the natural response of Kirk and the crew, and who want to be at Kirk's side no matter what, and Spock feels the same way too, as we've seen with Zachary Quinto's Spock, who's more in touch with his emotions. Spock cedes control of Kirk for the mission, and we go, and our story begins to take off. After taking control of the ship, Kirk attempts to reconnect with Dr. Marcus, who has tried to avoid him at any cost. When he finally does get the opportunity to talk to her, they are interrupted by her son, David. The boy appears to be around 9 or 10 years old, which tracks back to around the time that Carol left the Enterprise before returning as Spock's chief medical officer. Before Kirk can ask any questions, they arrive at the site where the distress call is originated, and floating in the middle of space are the fiery remains of the USS Kelvin. They have a boarding team of Spock, Kirk, and Bones make their way over to the Kelvin, where it all seems to be fresh wreckage, not a single person in sight. And when they get to the bridge, they discover a body trapped under the helm, which turns out to be Kirk, who is still as young as the day as the Kelvin was thought to be destroyed. And our story begins to really unfold there. And there'd be this whole with Star Trek, and I know people know me as a sci-fi guy. With Star Trek and Star Wars, Star Trek especially, there's always this underlying tone that you want to hit with every film. And with this, it's more so about Kirk finally getting that chance to learn who his father really was, and then kind of learning and understanding what it really is to be a father. And I love the Kelvin timeline, but my two favorite films outside of the Kelvin timeline with the original crew are Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, which is where we found out that Kirk had a child with Carol Marcus. And in Search for Spock, that child, who's a grown man already by the time we meet him, has died. And I felt like it's bringing the storyline of Kirk's father dying in the or thought to have died in the past, and Kirk learning that he is a father, is kind of that perfect way of bringing those two storylines together, while also giving the audience the opportunity to actually grow with David if for some reason there were to be a future in the series. So of course, with the cast, you have the cast of heroes, the typical Spock. Everyone returns in their roles, including Chris Hemsworth as Kirk. But for the villains in this film, which would be Klingons, I'd like to bring in someone like a Mahershala Ali or a Chadwick Boseman, who I feel like, considering a lot of Klingons were played by actors of color, and how serious and how much talent these two men bring to their craft, they'd be the perfect people to put in those roles.
Can you slide up one more slide again?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
And then the director I'd want to choose for this project would be Ava DuVernay, because she has the ability to bring out the pure emotion of a situation, as you could see in the Netflix series When They See Us, and the heartbreaking situations that would follow in the story. She's one of the up-and-coming talents in Hollywood who deserves a chance to helm a project like this. I know that she's only directed like 2 or 3 films, and her last film, if I remember correctly, was A Wrinkle in Time, which wasn't well received.
It's actually very good.
I personally, I didn't understand why it wasn't well received. I get that it's one of the hardest scripts to nail. I did watch it and I liked it more than I thought I would. But I think that she, especially being a woman of color, knows how to handle certain emotional situations. And I think she'd probably be the best option for this. So yeah, that's my pitch.
It's pretty cool. I like it. It's almost like another one of those coming of age, but this is a science fiction in future time base.
Yeah, so that was my whole thing. Let's bring the other 3 back in real quick. What do you guys think?
I've heard this already,
heard this. So.
But the Klingon part I did not know about, and I do like the acting choices. And Mahershala Ali is also in mine. So, but no, I did like the acting choices for the Klingon and the directing choice. Hell, I love me some Ava DuVernay. So
I like the choice to bring Hemsworth back.
I mean, they've made that known. That was the next step in the series, and that's kind of why I went with that, because I've always wanted to see where that was going.
Yeah.
So
I love the Abrams Star Trek movies so much. Like, as a guy that didn't know anything about Star Trek before watching them, like, I was just so fascinated and intrigued with this universe. I do want to see it properly end. I feel like Star Trek Beyond was so good, but it didn't give me that conclusion that I needed. So, of course, I would love to see a 4th one. And I think the reason, at least initially, why everyone fell out was because like money and Paramount was being a jerk. But
that's where you come in, Johnny.
Yeah, that's where Johnny comes in the scene. But I really dug it. And the second you started your presentation and you were like, oh, it's a series, I didn't get a proper ending to, I'm like, he's doing freaking Star Trek. Like, I already knew.
Yeah, which we still need to do our drinking watch along to the first Star Trek film, Chris.
God, great. But we'll talk about that later.
But yeah, so yeah, that was my pitch. So we're gonna finish up the pitches with Taylor and his original film. So Taylor, how about
The Stan original films.
Taylor? Hold on, I just want to get another good look at you.
Oh shoot! Okay. All right, are you able to pull my screen up? There it is. All right, cool. Let me see here. All right, Johnny, just you and I got one more PowerPoint for you today.
All right.
Appreciate your time. I struggled for a little bit on what to do for this. I did originally go in the direction of trying to do like a big budget, IP project, but I decided to settle on something called Stargazer, which is an original short film that I'm actually trying to make within the next year. It's something I'm writing right now. Okay. The title is Stargazer. It's like a 10 to 15 minute psychological thriller / drama. We open up on like a secluded rural backcountry road, mid-afternoon. A young girl, 17 years old, is walking down the street. She's got headphones in, very carefree. A van drives past her going in the other direction. And we see it stops behind her. Brake lights come on. It throws it in reverse, and it's coming back towards her. But she doesn't hear it. She's not worried about it. She's actually looking up at the sky, sort of serenely. Seems very content and happy. Somebody gets out of the van, walks up behind her, big guy, and stuffs a bag over her head. Pulls her backwards. She struggles, but he throws her in the van, slams the door, and we go to title card called Stargazer. Naturally, next shot, her bag getting ripped off her head. She's panicking. She's restrained. She's tied to a chair. Realizes she's in a barn, an old dilapidated barn. She looks around, panics, takes in her surroundings, realizes that this is her family's barn, belonged to her parents. And a man standing there in front of her, he introduces himself as Henry. And he's actually kind of warm-hearted, almost kind, his demeanor, if she weren't meeting him under present circumstances. He introduces himself, and she goes, You kidnapped me and brought me to my father's barn. What are you, a cop? What is going on? So I'm not a cop. But your parents did hire me to come get you. And he explains that he is what's called a deprogrammer. Now, deprogramming is like an actual practice that started in the 1970s. A real career choice you could have pursued, where essentially you'd be hired to kidnap cult members, hold them captive, and then essentially try to unbrainwash them, punch holes in their logic and show them why it's wrong, and basically to return to civilization. Pretty fascinating field to work in, and very controversial because, it's kind of questionable gray area where the legalities of being hired to essentially kidnap people, even if it is their parents or legal guardians hiring you to do that. But that is what Henry's been hired to do. So he has kidnapped our protagonist. Her name is Celeste. At least that's the name she's going by. So he explains that to her, that he's got her from this cult that she's joined. The cult that she's joined is called the Night Coven. They're a group of essentially witches who worship the night sky. And they believe that a sentient star is actually moving towards the earth so that it can claim the planet, and anybody who witnesses it and accepts the light they're the ones who will be left behind. Well, essentially will be left to live while the others disappear. So he has taken her from that cult, and time is of the essence in the story because she's 17 years old. She's about to become an adult. Her parents are worried that she'll come of age and then they won't have any power over her anymore. They won't have any grounds to call her back into their family and into civilization. They think they're going to lose her forever. for her, you know, he's not going to let her go until she breaks and says, you know, I denounce my new belief system. However, the small town that they're in, where she lives in, it's not a coincidence that this group congregates there, because there's a comet coming towards the Earth, sort of like a Halley's Comet. It's going to be so close that you can witness it, and the small town has this unique vantage point. They're secluded that you can see the night sky, and so people are actually congregating from the country to come to this town and see this event. But in actuality, at least as far as the Coven believes, this is their star that they worship. It's coming to the Earth. So Celeste needs to get outside of the barn and see it, or else she's going to be left behind, essentially. So it's very important to her that she gets out. So you get into this kind of ideological argument between the two of them. And Henry's got like these scrawled notes and photos of different members, journal writings and things like that as he's pieced together their belief system. This is something pulled from an H.P. Lovecraft journal, so a lot of crazy ramblings in there.
I was going to ask whether you made that.
No, that was not me. That was not me. I'm not quite that unhinged. But you as they sort of debate each other, that's how you begin to piece together her belief system and basically the plot of the story. But the real tension in it is not only will he let her go, but it kind of has the adverse effect. Instead of him convincing her that what she believes is wrong or crazy, she actually starts to appeal to him, and he starts to wonder if maybe there's any merit to their system of belief. So it's kind of, that's where the psychological element comes in, is them battling ideologies and wondering, you know, who's going to come out on top. Is she going to get out by his own volition, or is she going to have to escape somehow? And should she escape? As far as casting goes, you know, it's a short film I personally like to make, so this is sort of just a fun experiment part of it. But as far as Henry goes, I see him as kind of a Ben Mendelsohn type. He's obviously been kind of typecast as a villain in the past couple of years, but there's I think a duality to his range that goes beyond just evil guy in Star Wars. But especially in HBO series The Outsider, which I really enjoy, he plays a small town cop investigating a murder, and he's a lot more you empathize with him a lot more. He's more of a human than a villain. So I think that duality of, should I trust this guy? You know, is he a good person, or is he the antagonist of the story? I think would be really interesting with somebody who can represent that. As far as Celeste goes, somebody like Margaret Qualley, I think. Really enjoyed her in The Nice Guys, or most recently Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, who again can kind of play this doe-eyed young person. And then, you know, in Hollywood, she literally plays a Charles Manson acolyte. So again, she can get sinister and scary if she wants to. So really only 2 performances in it. You know, it's a kind of a one location film. So somebody with some range and who can their whole thing is making the 2 people question each other. So I think it'd be important for the audience to get involved in that and have to sort of question people's motivations and moralities as well. As far as influencing goes, I mentioned The Outsider, HBO series. As far as visual influence goes, I see it as kind of a muted, desaturated film. A lot of yellows and greens. It's the idea is that it would take place in a small town, largely in a barn. So very rural setting, or even Mindhunter, which again, desaturated, kind of greens and yellows. And the best part of that show is really a couple people talking to each other in a room. So a lot to aspire to from that series. It's a one location film. So when I think of the tone and delivery I'd like to approach, something like Drew Goddard's 10 Cloverfield Lane is definitely in my mind. They're stuck in a doomsday bunker, or David Fincher's Panic Room. A family hiding in a panic room as violent thieves rob their home. So sort of one location, tense, stuck here, want to get out. That's the vibe I'm going for. I'm still debating how I want it to end. I have kind of a grounded ending. I kind of have a horror movie ending. When I'm writing stuff, I always go towards horror. Nick knows about that. But I'd like to keep it more grounded, because it's not just a thriller. It's also kind of a story of like generational shift. It's a young person being sat down by an older person and saying, your worldview doesn't work. You have to abandon it. You have to adjust to what we always have done. And it's her saying, I'm rejecting your institutions. The future is ours, and we're going to go about it how we see fit. So that, in a nutshell, is Stargazer.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Have you done your script yet, or the script is not written yet?
I'm in the middle of writing the script right now. The struggle for me is figuring out what the ending's going to be. I get writer's block if I don't know how it ends.
Right.
I like to know the beginning, I like to know the end, and then the fun part for me is figuring out what we can do in the middle to get from one point to another. So
Right.
I am writing it right now. I'm just figuring out how it should end.
Okay.
I should have known you were going something with that horror thriller ride.
That was cool. Like, I'm not even in the front. That was cool.
See, I'm like, oh, I'm like, oh, this is Murmur all over again. A brilliant idea that's just like, yeah.
See, I want to go less scary than Murmur.
Less scary though. Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, when you were pitching it, it reminded me a lot of when we were pitching Murmur in front of the class. I'm like,
I was thinking back. I was thinking back
the
to
green
those days.
tones. I'm like, I remember that a lot.
Murmur was pretty blue.
I like it a lot.
I'm going green.
Well, yeah. Let's do it. I'm sorry. I know it was funny because Connor, who wasn't able to be on today, we were talking about his pitch and how we were going to bring the Murmur boys back together to make his. So let's just do that for this one. Let's just keep it up.
Dude.
That's actually Taylor's plan, as he stated to me before this. So, all right, Johnny, you're big old studio exec here. If you had to pick,
if I had to pick, I'll probably do this. First of all, let me give you a rundown. So Nick's story is more a contemporary coming-to-age storyline. Chris' story is more a superhero coming-to-age storyline. Matt's storyline is more a sci-fi science fiction storyline. Matt is very different because he's not a coming-to-age story to a degree, but it's still similar, but more the mental health coming-of-age type of storyline. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because you had to fight against the occult ideas of stuff. If I'm a studio exec and I have all the money in the world to run this thing, I would say I'll run them all. Why? I'll give you a reason why. My job would be bringing money back to my company, right?
Yeah.
Each one of this storyline can bring me money. I'm satisfying mostly the minority for having minority superhero coming out, which align with the other superhero movies coming out in the future, with Asian American superhero, and so on and so on. So Chris' idea will come out really well. I can sell the movie to Disney, so Nick movie can go really well there. Definitely for sure, a sci-fi Star Trek movie will make a lot of money, no matter what. No matter how horrible it is, it will make money because it's sci-fi science fiction. That's the truth of the genre. And then Taylor movie is a short, and for sure that can actually show him his capability as a director, if he's going to make that, and he can sell. So unfortunately, in my case, in this position, knowing that money is everything for me, I would probably do all your projects because I know I can do Taylor probably for less than what, $100,000. Nick, I can do his probably $1 million. Mine, I can probably make yours about $200 million, and then Chris, I can do yours probably about the same, $200 million. So yeah, why not?
all right. I'm putting you on the spot here, Johnny. Pick one though. You're not gonna hurt any feelings.
I'll take the $100,000 either way. That'd be a hell of a short film.
I mean, that's the reality of business. If everything had to make money, I can see all of these movies can make money. Now, if I had to pick one, I'll probably go with Taylor's. Not because it's a short film, because it's much more different from every other genre I've seen. So
Thank you.
Sci-fi one.
I like it. It's good.
No, then Chris said because superhero one, for example, there's already coming up pretty soon all those minority-based superheroes movies, right? We all know they're coming out. So yours is just alone to the side of those movies. So it's not a new storyline whatsoever. My idea is to closing up the whole trilogy of the Star Trek, which I'm a fan of Star Trek from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I want to see that happen. Also, but at the same time, I can see, this is something everybody do. Nick, I like you mentioned, I've seen yours already on Disney, so so it's hard for me to buy that. But at the same time, Disney Channel will buy that because it's something they would think. Then Taylor would be the only one that still enticed me to be more interested about. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I could see Taylor's like in my head. I was visualizing it as you were doing it, and I'm like, damn it. Like that's good.
And Taylor, I'm pretty sure Johnny knows a few indie talents he could hook you up with for doing something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm talking to one of them already.
I'm talking about acting, but yeah, that's
Ben Mendelsohn?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he can find a Ben Mendelsohn type.
Okay. Grouchy
actors, right?
I already know of a few people that actually kind of look like him around here, so
yeah.
I don't know about look like him, but I think Scott could pull it off very well.
Also, it's Vincent. Vincent actually looks like him.
That's what I was thinking. Was Vincent? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my whole reason for settling on using Stargazer today is I struggle to come up with smaller ideas that could feasibly get made, on a indie student film budget. My mind always goes too big. And so when I had this idea, I was like, oh, one location, 2 characters, a lot of dialogue. This is something you can make pretty cheap. So I've been trying to really meditate on this idea because it is something that you could feasibly make at this level.
And definitely, because all your ideas are very much currently a genre that everybody wants to buy. So executive producer, when they listen to all your ideas, they're all going to say that all of them can work. But yours is different because, Taylor, yours is more about a one location secluded short film. So for short film, even it's easy for them to say, here's the money, go do it and show me what you can do so we can maybe hire you for the feature film. And then, Chris, Nick, Matt's one, they're a feature film that we already know there's a following there. So I can't lose money.
That's important. Can't lose money.
But Taylor's is good. I really like Taylor.
Thank you.
But no, Johnny, thank you again for doing this, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for the invite.
Can I ask Johnny one more question?
Yes.
No.
And it's not about giving me money. Since we are now kind of doing this creative exercise, and because you have such experience in fan films, I'm wondering on the flip side, if you were given that, studio budget blank check to adapt any property or character, whatever it is, what is something you would like to make?
If I have a lot of money from the studio to make a feature film, I will make something related to sci-fi music, sci-fi spaceship related. Because that's something that I always want to do, but cannot make it happen because making a spaceship battlefield is harder to make than just do a sci-fi movie. So that would be something I would do. Sci-fi movie with spaceship aliens, fighting against each other. They got galaxies throughout the galaxy. Almost like a Star Wars, but better at writing.
Got him.
So Star Trek.
I'm so sorry. I watched every Star Wars movie, every Star Trek movies, even the cartoons, Clone Wars, right recently, and I just realized all the Star Wars storyline is very flat.
Oh no, yeah. There's the writing's not good. It's the overarching stories is what I love about Star Wars. But I could
but not individually. Not individually each one. I mean, you watch them again, you realize just their story dialogues are so flat that it doesn't make sense. In the sense of it's not very good dialogue writing.
That's why Rise of Ren is his favorite Star Wars movie. So that's why.
Yes, that's the only one I like.
Sure. No, I will agree with you. Except these last 2 episodes of Clone Wars, I thought were just brilliant, and I had chills.
Yeah, the Clone Wars is actually a pretty good cartoon.
Yes,
and I watched the whole 7th season within about a week.
Yeah, we got 2 more episodes left, so I'm struggling right now.
But the dialogue for each of those storylines is so flat that it doesn't entice me. It's not intelligent enough. And then I think about that way, like, okay, it's almost like it's for people who doesn't want to think but rather enjoy.
Yeah.
And the Star Trek is more about thinking than enjoying it.
Yep. And that's why I kind of, with my pitch, that's kind of why I went with the whole father-son aspect of things, because that's especially in today's day and age, how fathers and sons can clash. And actually, that's a generational tale. I know my dad and I clash. I know Nick and his father clash. It's just one of those things where in this story, you'd have a father and a son who'd be around like the same age, or the son would be a little bit older than the father. And then the son's now finding out he's a father himself. So that's, I get what you mean by Star Trek is more thought out, and people hate me when I say this, but I love both. I prefer Star Wars, clearly. But
I like to watch any sci-fi movie. I'll watch it. Stargate, Star Wars, Star Trek. I don't care. But sometimes I realize the difference between the storyline, then you make a difference.
Yes, definitely. Chris, what were you about to say?
Oh, nothing. No, I didn't know you like Star Wars like that.
Oh yeah, because it's not like we didn't meet at a Star Wars event or anything.
Yeah, I had a whole convention for it. No, nothing.
Do you guys realize? I think we almost got through this entire episode without anybody saying Star Wars, but we blew it.
That happened.
Johnny brought it up. Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny did it. It was Johnny.
It wasn't me, the guy who was wearing a Star Wars shirt. It was Johnny K. Woo.
That's right.
Noted. But Johnny. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
I
appreciate your time.
No problem.
You on Facebook and everything, and this is the kind of what I like the journalist to be getting to know people. And I know Nick and I are talking with Keith about coming on. We're talking about having Ron on, Scott on. Just we want to keep expanding this and having more fun with it, and this is a great way.
Yeah, definitely. They're great people.
Yes, but thank you for coming on, guys. Remember to hit like the Facebook page. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like and subscribe there. Keep an eye out towards the middle of May, where we're going to have our movie trivia challenge going up. We got the bracket set up for that, and that's going to be a fun old time there. That's inspired by the movie Trivia Schmodown, and I'm going to whoop Chris's ass first round.
Weird. Okay.
But yeah, signing off. I'm Matt.
I'm Nick.
That's Nick. All the way over there is Taylor.
Here I am.
Below me is Chris. And this is another episode of Who Are They? Real Talk.
Bye.
Bye-bye.